What's going on, guys? Jacob here. Welcome back to Robski Football, and today I am bringing you my quick-fire preview and predict video for Gameweek 32 of the Premier League. Now, in this series, I am just purely going to go through all the fixtures, give you my quick thoughts and feelings, and my ultimate predictions for these games. And West Ham, obviously coming off of the back of the FA Cup defeat against Leeds at home, in which was a dire performance, it has to be said. Despite that, I believe the final few minutes in which they clawed it back to 2-2 did show a lot to Nuno, in the sense that his players do have that fight in them and within them as a squad. Wolves, on the other hand, have also shown a lot of surprising results over the last recent weeks as well, winning against Villa, winning against Liverpool as well. And on the Wolves side, it does seem that, of course, mathematically they are down and out, but they do have a lot of players that could earn big summer moves in the future. Obviously, players like Tolu, like Joao Gomez, for example. But in this game, I do see a lot of goals, as I also and West Ham will pull through with this one for a 2-1 victory. Saturday, first game of the Saturday slate is Arsenal versus Bournemouth. Arsenal, of course, have got it all to do and all to prove. They are obviously, the last few weeks has been a topsy-turvy cycle for them, being outclassed in the Carabao Cup final against Man City, and then also surprisingly dumped out of the FA Cup against Southampton. Although I think it was one hell of a blip to have. I do think it was a blip, and obviously the Champions League game against Sporting in midweek shown that they did show a good deal of resolve, and did come away with an important 1-0 win to take back to the Emirates with them for next week. Bournemouth, on the other hand, have been pretty linear and pretty underwhelming, probably for the whole season, it can be said, but most recently with 5 draws in the last 5. They're not pulling up any trees anytime soon, it seems. That being said, maybe I'm being a bit harsh on Iraola and his men, losing key players at the start of the season, but also then Antoine Semenyo partway through the season is obviously left a big hole, despite it being filled by a Brazilian talent in Ryan, who is going to be one to watch for the future for sure. With this one, though, I think Arsenal do come away with a 2-0 victory. I think, again, it's a game that they have to win, and to keep the pressure on Man City going into that game next week. If they do drop these points, it's going to be detrimental, not just in terms of looking at the table, but also to the confidence and the mindset of those Arsenal players. Brentford versus Everton. Now, who would have thought, looking, I guess, at the start of the season at these two teams, that these now are, competing for European positions between them. It's going to be a massive game in that context. Brentford on that side have been more of the surprising package. I think Keith Andrews has done a phenomenal job with the players at his disposal, with the budget at his disposal. David Moyes, on the other hand, it did seem, that section of the September through to December where they maybe have lost their way a bit, have now come through that winter period, gaining a great amount of momentum. Key players such as James Garner, even players like Beto have shown up in recent weeks, and it does shape up to be a tasty affair. With this one, though, I am looking at Brentford winning 2-1. Now, looking at the Burnley versus Brighton game, Burnley sitting in 19th position, having won one of their last 21 Premier League games, which it's fair to say is not the form for a team looking to stay in the Premier League. Brighton, on the other hand, have won 4 of their last 5. Despite it being a bit of a mixed bag season for Brighton, I do think they have a lot of quality going forward, and especially putting them up against a team such as Burnley, I do see goals in this game. I've gone with 3-1 to Brighton. Liverpool-Fulham, well, this is a tasty affair as well. I think as a Man United fan, I do like to see this type of form from Liverpool, but I won't be tempting fate. Liverpool, of course, over the last few weeks have been dumped out of the FA Cup. They've also lost to PSG away in the Champions League. and it is going to be an interesting game, this one. I think Fulham, especially after the November-December period, showed a lot of resolve defensively, but also the ability to eke a point out or eke 3 points out of a game. And that's why I think, especially given the fact that Fulham have been unbeaten in their last 3 games against Liverpool, I think they can come away from Anfield with at least a point, and that's why I've gone 1-1 in this game. Now, Sunderland versus Tottenham. Now, Tottenham, of course, this is a huge game for Roberto De Zerbi and his men. The question is, obviously, has he been able to, since his appointment, been able to instill a mindset and a system tactically to help them become more resolute at the back, stop leaking goals, but also to show some quality going forward? Sunderland, on the other hand, have had a great season by all accounts. No one, I believe, had picked them to be in the position that they're in the league table at the moment. They have done extremely well in the transfer market, bringing in the likes of Granit Xhaka, for example, who has been an ultimate bargain of the season to show his experience in that midfield to lead a team like Sunderland, who did need that concrete and hard kind of personality in Granit Xhaka, but also one with experience. Sunderland versus Tottenham is going to be a hard one to call. Obviously, we don't know how De Zerbi is going to set his team up. Of course, we think they're going to be more pragmatic in their approach and hope to at least build a foundation in which to build off on in the next few games of the season. For this one, though, I have gone 2-1 to Sunderland. I just think the Stadium of Light for Sunderland, the fans, the form and at least the performances that they've shown in parts throughout the season is enough for the fans to get behind them as they push further into the season towards the end and trying to get up as many places as possible. I think Sunderland are going to take this one. However, I do think we'll see a better version of Tottenham, a bit more of a structure and almost a glimpse into what De Zerbi is going to try and do maybe in the long term. Now, looking into Nottingham Forest versus Aston Villa, both teams playing their Europa League fixtures this evening as I record. Forest getting a valuable draw away to Porto and Aston Villa winning 3-1 away in Italy against Bologna. Forest in the Premier League, however, haven't been obviously of great quality. They sit 16th as it stands and in pretty tight quarters to Tottenham and to West Ham, who are further down the table. Villa also have, over the course of the season, I remember we've talked about them as potential title contenders at one point, but of course the detrimental losses in the midfield of players like John McGinn, Boubacar Kamara and Yuri Tillemans have obviously proved themselves to be valuable assets in their own right, and Villa, have seen a drop-off as a result. That being said, Unai Emery has also done, in my opinion, a tremendous job getting out as much as he has from these players. Even having Ollie Watkins now firing over the last few games, he's grabbed a few goals for himself. Morgan Rogers, I think, has been probably one of the most consistent performers in a Villa shirt this season as he looks to get on that plane to America for England. That being said, Forest obviously at home, it's a great crowd that they have down there at the City Ground. I think they'll get behind their boys, but I don't think the quality in the attacking third will get them over the line against Villa, and that's why I'm going for a 0-0 draw in this game. Palace versus Newcastle. Palace have just finished their game in the Europa Conference League against Fiorentina, winning 3-0. Newcastle have, realistically, let's say, had the week off over the last few days. They obviously going to be rested and fresh for this game, and that's probably the only difference I see between these two teams because of Newcastle's poor form and Crystal Palace and the way their season has gone in parts. There's not really too much that splits them at this time. But that being said, I think Newcastle will have too much for Palace on the day, and that's why I've gone for 2-0 to Newcastle. Next, on to Chelsea versus Man City. Now, a huge game for many reasons. Chelsea have it all to do in terms of European qualification for next season after getting dumped out the Champions League by PSG earlier in the year. Man City obviously coming off the back of the Carabao Cup win against Arsenal and also the win against Liverpool in the FA Cup has given them, I'm sure, a good amount of confidence, especially players obviously like Erling Haaland. I think he was bereft of a little bit of that kind of cutting edge that we've known from him in recent years, that finishing prowess over the last few weeks, and I think he might have regained that at the right time, especially for this running for the title. That being said, Chelsea did draw at the Etihad earlier this season, and City have only won one out of their last 6 games. So the form going into it for City in this regard isn't too well at all. That being said, I do think City have got this one, given the turmoil that's happening with Chelsea, with a few of their playing staff feeling a bit aggrieved with the departure of Enzo Maresca. I do think Man City have this one 3-1. Now, on to the final game of this Premier League weekend, we have Manchester United versus Leeds. Now, Man United, of course, sitting pretty good in third position at this time with their search to secure Champions League qualification for next season. Leeds, on the other hand, in 15th, a few points ahead of West Ham, Spurs and Nottingham Forest. However, I don't think they can count themselves out of this relegation battle just yet, especially with the incoming of Roberto De Zerbi to Tottenham. Nottingham Forest looking pretty good as well, and also West Ham in parts. I don't think Leeds can put their foot off the gas just yet. Obviously, over the next 6 to 7 games, it's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out. But I think in that regard, Leeds have just done enough over the course of the season so far to put themselves in this position, and I do think and suspect that they'll grab a few points over the coming weeks to secure their Premier League title for next season. That being said, Leeds have drawn 5 of their last 6 away from home. On the other hand, Man United at Old Trafford have been pretty good and pretty strong, especially since Carrick's introduction. That's why I think with essentially the week and a half to 2 weeks rest that the Man United players have had, with their tour to Ireland in a training camp, I do think maybe that has given them some, kind of a platform to bounce off of, going on to the last 7 games of this season and trying to get this victory against Leeds in a huge game. I do think Man United have too much going forward for Leeds, and that's why I've gone 2-1 to the Red Devils on Monday night. Now that's all for my Game Week 32 prediction video. Thank you very much for watching. I appreciate all the support so far, and I will be coming back to you with another video pretty soon.